All right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. We'd like to hear your views on the conversation that we're having. We're calling it Youth and Taxes. Are we overtaxed as a nation or not? At Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Daybreak. We'll read some of your views here. Let me introduce my guest one more time, starting from my immediate right, Philip Mwangale, Executive Director, Jibo Group Africa. Thank you for making time. We also have Wanjiku Thiga, Founder, Gears for Change. Asante sana. We have CPA Robert Maina, accountant and a member of the Public Finance and Taxation Committee at ISPAC. Thank you for making time. And Steve Biko Afula, Policy, Governance and Research Analyst. Asante sana for making time. As soon as Nathaniel Mungare, Director ICT and Programs at the ANC comes in, we'll rope him into the discussion, but he's not here yet. But let's start off with the Daily Nation. And Steve, I'll start with you on this one. When you look at the front page of the Daily Nation, Ruto strikes billions in the U.S. Bag of goodies. President William Ruto and his U.S. host, Joe Biden, yesterday announced a raft of multi-billion shilling new investment deals in Kenya with a focus on security, education, and governance. Was this trip worth it, now that we're starting to see what the deals are?
First, I would like to say that this is a very serious and historic trip for the president and the aspect of how it places Kenya in relationship to USA on a global aspect. So in terms of importance, yes, it's been very important to Kenya. However, I feel like Ruto will have done more to be able to get better results out of this. One, I was looking at debt relief as a key aspect of this relationship between the US and Kenya. And secondly, I expected better aspects in terms of getting access for farmers, agro-processing and manufacturing, because I think those are issues that can be able to take Kenya forward, because what we're getting is basically getting ourselves more into debt.
Okay.
So for me, I'm a bit worried because when you look at what's happening back at home, we are heavily taxed in regards to the kind of services we are getting. So getting more money, we don't know whether they're grants or they're loans. So there's a lot more to be said. There's a lot more to be interrogated from what's actually coming, because at the end of the day, the US seems to be benefiting more from this kind of relationship than we are back here at home.
Okay. CPA Maina, what are your thoughts on this trip?
Yeah, thank you very much, Trevor. When I look at the various pronouncements that I've made during this trip, I think it's a mixed bag. In one sense, I have seen a bit of commitment by certain multinational corporations that operate within the country and are headquartered in the US. So what we'll be looking at is whether the commitment that they've made will actually come through in the coming year. So hopefully, in terms of the commitments we've seen from these multinationals, we actually see these investments coming through into the country, and I think that's a positive. On the other side, I think we've also seen a bit of commitments in terms of additional debt, and I think one of them is the major road that is going to be constructed, and I think it's important that we ensure that when we are contracting and when we are getting into such agreements, we are very careful in terms of the contracting terms, just to ensure that we do not get ourselves deeper and deeper into the debt situation that we have in the country.
Okay. Wanjiku?
For me, especially somebody who comes from the civil society end, it's to really appreciate the bag of goodies that Ruto has managed to bring forth for us. I'm happy to see that USAID is really committing about, I think, 2.6 million USD for youth empowerment, particularly to strengthen political engagement. I'm a political inclusion advisor. I ran for office. I know the challenges that young people go through to ensure participation, representation for young people. And you've seen that younger parliamentarians are really vocal and connected to real issues. So for us, if we have money to really rally and ensure the youth voters block for 2027, that's a plus for us young people. And also, I have seen that we've also gotten a goodie to support electoral reforms. The other day, Senate had it put forth a call for memoranda and participation. And as young women in politics, we came together as also senior women, let me say women-led organizations. We put forth our memoranda, and there are things we want to see within electoral reforms being changed, the Political Amendments Act. We want to see ORPP strengthened to be able to support political parties carry out party primaries. You see, because it's where at the nomination processes where the biggest, or let me say the biggest setback for women is that. So you see, with this money, we are able to really put forth good work as we prepare for 2027.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mwangali?
I'm reminded of President Museveni's sentiments a few weeks ago when he was here in Nairobi at the last AU outing. And I remember him mentioning his frustration about certain foreign actors coming in with funding, and the only things they would want to fund, workshops, capacity building, and that stops at it. That is what I see from most of these reports we are getting from the deals and agreements that have been signed by President Ruto in the US. Now, one of the critical things for me is the fact that when we are told 400 billion shillings are coming to Kenya, for example, we are not going to be receiving the money in most of those cases. You have scenarios where we are told, you have a deal for $7 million to facilitate the National Police Service, and that will go towards capacity building and training. That, for me, is not may not be a real benefit that the Kenyan may feel. There's also the bit in which Steve has mentioned about us getting into more debt. Some of these deals are debt deals, they are loans. So when we call them goodies, that is to give loans and debt a clock, one that I don't think we should be very excited about. There are some positive benefits from this visit. As Wanjiku has mentioned, there are things that are going to come to the civil society space. Again, not coming directly to government, but funding that space and increasing public engagement and public participation. So there are a few good things that are coming out of this, but we must also be very critical about the specifics of these deals, because in some instances, the president has gone out, and not just with the US, he has gone out to certain countries, said he has made certain deals and agreements, but we do not know the specifics. So we would be very interested in getting the specifics of these deals and what they mean to our fiscal health as a country and our political space going forward. The US is benefiting strategically. You will see in the coming days them increasing their presence. We have been used to them just at Manda Bay, down at the coast. We are likely to see them increase that presence. We have seen them say they're going to, I think one of the things I saw mentioned was that they will attach maybe 1 or 2 people at the National Defense headquarters to aid in strategic operations. We know what that means. So we are being strategically positioned by the United States on the continent rather than we positioning ourselves on the continent. And that,
I think we're being positioned.
We are being positioned. But anyway, we'll receive the goodies that are there, but we must also be critical about the things that are coming negatively to us.
Interesting perspective. Then let me bring in now Nathaniel Mungare is coming in now, Director ICT and Programs at the ANC. Before you walked in, we were talking about the bag of goodies by the president.
Yes.
What do you make of this trip? Was it worth it in the end after having seen the lineup of the goodies, quote unquote, that the president has managed to achieve?
Thank you so much for having me, Trevor, this morning. First of all, I think since the president came to power, he's been able to traverse many parts of the world, and he's become the chief diplomat #1 for Kenya. You did not, personally, before the campaigns, I did not expect the president will excel in diplomacy in such a big way. He's managed to position Kenya. If you go to many parts of the world, Kenya is now respected in the community of nations in many ways. You've seen the number of international conferences that have happened in Kenya so far. So he's been able to push brand Kenya in a big way, and he's been able to put conversations going forward in many international forums. You've seen the respect he has earned in a world stage. For example, when he's meeting the World Bank leaders or the IMF, these multilateral financing institutions, he's been able to call out very important debate like reforming the financial architecture for the whole world on issues of development. So this has caught the attention of the world that, hey, Kenya has something, or there's a Kenyan leader here who is speaking progressively for many even African continents. So you saw, for example, the meeting that took place in Nairobi called IDA, for international development discussions. So the president has been able to champion the issues around development and strategic partnerships for Kenya and for the African continent, and these has caught the eye. If you look at the geopolitics, the very reason why the president is being invited to the US to have a state visit, not an official visit, a state visit, is because of the strategic significance of, first of all, of Kenya and the leader we have at the moment. So we've seen these partnerships that are coming out of these discussions. They are very progressive. It's coming on the backdrop of 60 years of continuous engagement between Kenya and the US. And this is something that we must applaud the president for putting our name in the world map.
Okay, but Philip says that the bag of goodies is not so much goodies. We are still in debt at the end of it all. Let's take one, for example.
Yes.
The 471 billion for the Nairobi-Mombasa Expressway.
Yeah.
It's going to be a 475 kilometers toll road.
Yes.
Same as the expressway we have right now.
Yes.
Is this the model that we want going forward, where they come and construct it, then there's a share of the revenue of those who use that expressway at the time? Because it's not a direct debt, so to speak.
First of all, that is a pessimistic view. I don't agree with it. Because if you look at the positive side of the expressway between Nairobi and Mombasa, it's going to open up the economy. It's a key infrastructure project that has been in the discussion for a very long time. Having it delivered is going to make transport easier. For example, it's going to take a shorter time to travel from Mombasa to Nairobi, or to transport goods from Mombasa to Nairobi. So this is, on the positive side, it is a very good thing. Yeah. And this is, clearly you can see, it is an investment in the arrangement of the PPP. It's rev share. They are going to invest money in this project. They are going to recoup money from it. So this is not a debt. It's an arrangement of the PPP. So it's a very positive thing. Okay. They should be able to probably discuss details with us, in the sense, inform the public. If there will be the side roads. If you don't want to use the toll road, you should be able to use the side road. So there should be those options when they are doing this. But it's a very positive key infrastructure project. Yeah, Biko, do you agree?
No. I think it's high time we were honest about what's really happening in the country. If you look at the proposed highway from Nairobi to Mombasa, let me use the expressway currently in Nairobi. We've seen the fact that in as much as it's helped ease traffic in Nairobi, we're still paying heavily for it. What I expected from this trip, given the importance of it, though we were talking about it and saying it's historic in the last 16 years, I expected debt relief to be a very key factor. I expected issues of the current finance bill to be discussed on how Kenya is going to benefit from the relationship with the US. Because at the end of the day, these deals we've gotten from the US mean that we're going to be taxed more. Because we are beholden to IMF, we're beholden to World Bank, and we're beholden to the Paris institutions, which means whatever has been agreed in the US, we're going to pay for it dearly here. We're going to be taxed more for this road to be finished. We're going to be taxed more for a lot of things to be done, especially in terms of building capacity for fighting corruption and training our police. So for me, I mean, these are deals that could have been stricken between the Embassy of Kenya, and the ambassador to Kenya from the US. The importance of this trip and what we've gotten out of it do not actually balance out. And basically, this just means, irrespective of how my friend here would like to put it, Kenyans are still going to pay out of their pocket, because this is my country. Why do you have to make me use this particular road if I have money and I don't have money? So at the end of the day, what has Kenya given up to actually access this?
Yeah, but there has to be a way of funding this entire thing. So what do you suggest? For example, the expressway, you're not forced to use it. I mean, there's a toll charge for it. Even this Nairobi-Mombasa expressway will take you about 4.5 hours, just 4.5 hours to get to Mombasa. Nobody says you have to use it, though.
True. For me, I believe one of the biggest things that we need to have a conversation on is fighting corruption. If the US is willing to actually work with us in terms of ensuring that we've got good governance, structures for institutions, then we can have the resources we need to be able to fund our projects. Because we lose a lot of money to corruption. A third of our budget goes to corruption. When you look, even the president himself has admitted that there's a lot of budgeted corruption in the processes that are happening within government. So in as much as we need this road, and I believe, as someone who comes from Western, I believe this road will be very important, especially if it can be done from Malaba to Mombasa. It can actually position Kenya as a key exporting country in Africa. However, the issue about how are we coming to these programs, how are we being able to do this infrastructure, leaving us in a lot of debt. Because one of the key things that I was looking forward to is discussions between the US president, the Kenyan president, and World Bank on how best can we go forward in terms of alleviating our debt, restructuring our debt, and how we can be able to benefit wholly. Because at the end of the day, the ordinary person, me and you, how are we going to benefit from this? Nowhere. Basically, it just shows that my pay slip is going to be hit more out of this. So yes, these infrastructure programs are important, but we can find local solutions for them, especially if you're looking at private-public participations. There are better ways to do this without encouraging the public to pay out of their own pockets.
CV Maina, is there a direct correlation between this debt and taxation?
Absolutely, yes, Trevor. And I just want to bring my view from a public finance and taxation perspective, devoid the political angle to this. I think this is a public-private partnership, and there are different models that you can structure a public partnership. For instance, the expressway, we know this is it's privately financed. Someone came in, they financed, and they are collecting tolls to repay that debt. Now, one of the things that I think we had difficulties was, we have had issues in terms of getting the details of the contracting. But at least in the recent past, I've had the cabinet secretary indicating that the government did not guarantee traffic. Now, what we will need to know, and from a public finance and transparency perspective, is whether the government, for instance, has committed a certain level of traffic. Because what that does is that you have created a contingent debt. It will not appear in our balance sheet as a country in terms of additional debt. But if the government, for instance, they commit that 100,000 vehicles will go through that toll road per day, and you do not get to that level, then the government has to finance out of pocket. So those are some of the
bridge that gap.
Yes, absolutely.
Every day.
Every day when you have a deficit. So the key thing is that, and I think we need to know, is that the government has not committed to a certain level of traffic, that the private player who is coming to finance this road, in case there's a deficit, they bear that. In case there's a, they have the traffic goes up, it's their benefit. So we need to make sure that there's transparency in terms of how this contract will be drafted to ensure that we don't have contingent debt that we may not be reflecting in our debt road going forward to protect. I mean, we are saying we are increasing our taxes to be able to pay what we already have. We really don't want to incur a lot of debt where we, again, in the coming years, because then we will have to keep on increasing the taxes.
Okay. Njiku?
Yes, I would just like to chime in from what Biko said. And it's just to offer more clarity that President William Ruto has also ensured that we've had some money to fight anti-corruption, for anti-corruption initiatives. And as young people...
But are they working? The ones that we have already?
Yeah. If you can now, I know and I trust that you follow EACC, and they have really improved their communication towards, Kenyan public. And you can see every day they are reporting the kind of wealth. They are, they're capturing it back and giving it back to state. And what now this money has to go to do is now to strengthen such bodies that are out here fighting anti-corruption. And what the president has to do now is to have goodwill for such institutions to support them at the end of the day. Because if we are having more loans coming into Kenya, we have to ensure that we are pushed as good governance, champions, as social accountability experts. We have now to follow up and ensure that this money is coming to do its job, because it's for the public good. Therefore, for us, as active citizens, our work is to ensure that we give advocacy for bodies such as EACC so that they can be able to really get this job. But you can see, at the end of the day, President William Ruto is thinking about anti-corruption in Kenya.
Okay. Yeah. Philip, we picked just one specific one in the 471 billion Nairobi-Mombasa Expressway. And is this a good deal?
Whether it is a good deal or not depends on the specifics, because if we get to know, and as our good friend has mentioned, if we get to know what the specifics of the deal are, then we are at a better place to understand whether this is a deal that is beneficial to Kenyans. For example, if the deal involves, aside from guaranteed traffic, you have a deal that is has a tenure of 100 years, then you have a problem. Yes, you will be benefiting from ease of traffic from Nairobi to Mombasa, but what are we giving up, as Biko has mentioned? We could have an expressway from Nairobi to Kiambu, Nairobi to Isiolo, Nairobi to, all these places. They are good, but what are we giving up for this development? The craze with, these big infrastructure projects began with during the late Kibaki years. For me, I do not see the point in us or in a government rushing to build or complete a certain project within 5 years. I mean, Kenyans are still here. You can begin a few kilometers of that road, say you're building 100 kilometers, and over time there is a government plan, to proceed with that project. Just like we had the Vision 2030, flagship projects were begun across the country, money was expended, a new government came in and they decided we have no part to play in this flagship project. We'll start our own. And that is the challenge we have. Number two, we have an extravagance problem. When we talk about our expenditure and when we talk about, for example, these amounts that are coming in, if we still are an extravagant nation, we are not going to address these issues. We have the debt that we are paying off. We'll be discussing some of the tax proposals. But if the funds that government is receiving, if the revenue that government is receiving is going to paying salaries, our ballooning wage bill, and expenditure that is immoral, let me use that term, then we are not going to get ourselves out of this pit. If these monies are coming in, and thankfully, some of these funds that are coming in will not go straight to government. Some of these funds will go straight to the institutions. The EACC, for example, some of these funds will go to civil society organizations to enhance the civic space. There's something called the Global Integrity and Accountability Program that is managed by the US. Interestingly, in as much as the US is guilty of some things, they don't let their money go to waste. So we could rest easy that these funds that are coming in will be accounted for. Something I also forgot to mention when we were talking about these Ruto deals and the state visit or official visit. Personally, I don't know whether. I don't think
it is a state visit.
Yeah, well, it is a state visit, official visit. It doesn't really matter, well, for me, that it is a state or official visit.
It's been 16 years since an African head of state did that.
We shouldn't be celebrating that we have been invited to the United States, on a state visit. 16
years after. That's almost close to 2 decades.
For example, let's say we were going for state visits. African heads of states were going for state visits every year. I mean, what does that do to us? I don't see why.
Show some level of prudence, some level of recognition that you're doing something right?
You see, this is one of the things that I have been very critical about President Ruto's regime. And I talked about the U.S. strategically positioning Kenya. There are certain buzzwords that you hear the president talk about. There are certain catching statements that you hear in his speech. They are calculated to speak to a certain audience. And I think while this government is good at local political machinations, the geopolitical space is a different kettle of fish. While unaweza panga watu hapa na pale, on the geopolitical front, you can't, play. You are a pawn. You are a pawn in the geopolitical space.
But when you get recognition in the geopolitical space, doesn't that mean you're doing something right?
Now, you see, we have to look at it in this lens, that there is the bit where you can actually use your position on the geopolitical space, and you can also be used on the geopolitical space. Speak to many African countries and they will tell you that Kenya is a sellout because Kenya is, looking to the West begging for arms when we are supposed to be, restructuring ourselves and looking inward for solutions. When you hear President Ruto talking about local solutions, inward solutions, restructuring the African Union, for example, the things we are doing as a country are not pointing to that direction. This trip came, and we are thankful to Ambassador Meg Whitman. Nathaniel said President Ruto is diplomat number one, but I think you're forgetting the role Ambassador Whitman is playing in this in this whole space. So I think she has become diplomat number one. But the point I'm making is we have to be very thorough about the solutions we prescribe to ourselves rather than the solutions people prescribe for us. Okay, I have to take a quick break. When we come back, Nathaniel, I know you have a reaction there and you've been mentioned adversely, so I'll give you a chance to respond to this. But also, send in your views at Trevor Mbiji at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Daybreak. We're back in just a bit. We're talking about the youth and taxes. Are we overtaxed or not? That is a conversation we're heading into next, all right? See you shortly.